karate is an actual part of your culture, whereas someone like myself, being from the West, certainly loves the art, but it's not but it is not culture, at least a part of it, or I'm not a part of it. Do you feel a responsibility to propagate this art and culture in any particular way?
Mm. Yeah, this question was, I really had to think long and hard about this, because I didn't just decide one day, oh, I have to teach karate because, or because I'm Okinawan. It wasn't that at all. I am who I am. Therefore, I grew up with the Okinawan culture. And if you go into any Okinawan dojo, you feel overwhelmed at the amount of sharing there is, and how teachers and students will make you feel part of the dojo, because it's not competition. It's not I'm better than you, or anything like that. But if you go in with that attitude, you could really get knocked back on your ass with a smile. you know and then say muichido, you want that again, let's do it again, but they will definitely make light of it, and the afterthought will be more or less, well, hope they learned a lesson. But a lot of times, with the culture, and what I feel my personal responsibility to do is to take, especially after all of these years and seeing what has happened with all of the other students, my kohai and all the others in my dojo, that and see the paths that they have gone on, and not only seeing what they do, but seeing their students, because after all, our students are a reflection of us. They are really the best reflection of us, right? Not what we do. What they do is the best reflection of their sensei.
But how much of what you teach is regurgitation and how much of it is creation, in the sense that, you know, rather than parroting, how much of it is you repeating stuff that you've heard, and how much of it is kind of formulating stuff yourself and then passing it on?
A great question. I don't really believe in parroting, or I would say maybe 1 or 2%. 1 or 2% is, um, I might bring up in class where I remind the students, oh, Sensei Shinzato said, this is what the bunkai is for this technique, for example. So for example, I don't know if you're familiar with more of the Shodan-ryu style katas, like called the pinan.
Very much on the surface, Sensei, but I'm aware of the pinan kata.
Okay, so let's say the first pinan kata, after you finish the first section going one direction, you turn and you do 2 shutoke to the left, 2 shutoke to the right. If you think of it from a bunkai, sense, because I tell the students that the kata has to tell the story, much like hula dance or Okinawan dance. It tells a story, right? Be it the mountains, the sun, the waves, the horizon, or whatnot. And this tells a story more specifically as to this action of this moment, and I try to pitch it that way, as opposed to, oh, this is a way of, using these techniques in these series of attacks. Then it really confuses people, right? It really does. So instead, I teach, well, this tells a story. We don't change the story. This is the story. And that's it. You just accept it as it is. Now, with the shuto, right, you do a 1, 2, and I tell them, I make them think. I said, well, why would you block twice? Because it's called shuto uke. Why would you block twice, and then turn and block twice, and then turn again, and then go on to a series of defense and offensive techniques? So in this case, I would tell them, Sensei Shinzato also brought that up and would describe this as a block, or sort of a clearing of a person's hands or reach, and then come back and do a shuto to the neck or the throat. So it's the exact same technique, but one used as a defense and one's used as an offense. So I'll bring up things like that, as a commentary that was shared with me from Sensei Shinzato or Odo Sensei or something like that, but not very much in articulating biomechanics. And the reason why is that Odo Sensei was not one I would necessarily, state was well versed in biomechanics, and actually not too many Okinawan senseis are. And Sensei Shinzato, for him, it's become somewhat of an afterthought, but he is really diving into it head first, and he has, I would say, at least for the last 20 years, because he sees the needs and the methods to change as he ages. So therefore, he has to find a way to still be able to execute a effective block and an effective attack, right? And if he's, if his range of movement is less, and he's less flexible, and he has less strength, how can he still have an effective punch or an effective strike? Well, he has a way of teaching his karate, Kishabajuku, in such a way that even though he is elderly or at 80 years old, he can still effectively strike and effectively block without losing his balance, and still be on point with his focus.
It's also worth mentioning, Sensei, that Okinawa is the place of the world's longest lived people. So
right.
Okinawan idea of old and probably everyone else's idea of old is kind of quite skewed. Some of the driest people I've ever seen, Okinawan.
I really think it must be the food and the environment and the happiness there, because my father, born and raised, he's American, born and raised on the East Coast, has been through several world battles in the Second World War, and he's 97.
Wow.
Yes, still alive.
So Sensei, your father, so you grew up in a martial arts family pretty much. So your father is a practitioner of Shobudo Bujutsu Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
And taught there on Okinawa. And he encouraged your study. What was it like growing up in a family where martial arts was so much to the fore?
Well, as a child, you don't really have a choice. And I probably feared my father more than I feared God, because when he told me to do something, I damn well better do it, because I knew what else was coming. And I pushed my fathers, I'm sure, especially boys, we do our duty in pushing our father's limits, right? But he was one that, rightfully so, and I deserved it, where he would remind me that he could put in my body and put it back together. I mean, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I could break every bone in your body." You know, you would think someone swinging a bat, but no, he'd do it with his hands, and put it back together. You know, but that's how meticulous, you know, this form of jujitsu. You really have to know the body. And so, with that said, you know, his claims on, well, and put it back together. You know, imagine the pain in that. But you know, with that said, he was the one. I think I mentioned with you before in some conversation. He was the one that said to me, Pat, if you ever want to know how to hurt someone, you have to know how to heal them. That's not in a negative way, but I mean, look at what kind of damage your doctor could do to you, even your family doctor, right? If he wasn't in the right frame of mind. But at the same time, your cook could do the same thing, your chef, right? They could poison you. They could, you know, make you, you know, eat something that's delicious and savory, but still make you croak, right? So it's all these things that can be looked at as a means of healing, right? All of these arts for healing. There is a negative side to it, but you have to know that to heal as well. My father, like you say, is as a jiu-jitsu instructor. My mother is also was Nidan in Okinawa Kempo. My
Wow.
sister was also, I believe she also got up to a Nidan, but they didn't start until I was almost leaving the island. But I got to witness probably a good 3 or 4 years of their training. Um, but yeah,
Wow.
it was not a choice for me. You
Sure.
know, I started when I was 5. It wasn't a choice for me, but it was just like brushing my teeth.
You know, you mentioned your mother, Sensei. How did she, as a proud Okinawan woman, how did she influence your karate? How did she influence your life, in fact?
Um, she she really influenced me because of her. Um, well, I'll put it. She was the one that shared with me more of the depth in the Okinawan culture, in the Okinawan ways. She proved to me that even though she already had graduated with a degree in children with special education, you know, she used to teach, you know, those with limitations and handicaps. She had a degree in that field. She turned around and went to a U.S. American university and got another degree in the English language, as well as a minor in another language, Chinese. And so and psychology as well. And so she really, you know, let me know by her actions to never give up, to never stop, that you can always make progress. And I think she was always one that would describe to me that competition wasn't about beating somebody else,
Mm.
that it was about being better than you were last time.
Mm.
So it's this internal thing about improving oneself and looking at it, be it that you lost or won, or, you know, made a faster time or a lesser time, that you can look to yourself, you know, just a reflection and say, and critique, you know, why, and be okay with that.
Mm.
You know, not so much get down on yourself, but to understand why. So I think that's really what comes out of it, you know, to understand the whys, how it ties to your end goals, to know why, now you believe it. Whereas to know how, you know, to get, let's say, a degree, read a book, pass these tests, you get a degree, then you can go get a job. Well, at that job, are you going to believe in what you did? Do you remember everything? And did you really understand the whys? Right. And so that makes a difference between a person who has a profession where they really know, you know, what they're doing, as opposed to no one understand what they're doing and why, as opposed to, going through a list of, things. Okay, in a typical case, we would do this, do that, do this. Go ahead and take some aspirin. You'll be fine. Kind of thing, right? And so that's the type of thing. And so my mom, in the way that she would describe the arts and share the deeper aspects of them, I felt more connected to being Okinawan later in life, because I was really torn between the two different cultures. And I only spoke Japanese / Okinawan to my mother, and I only spoke English to my father. My father wanted that on purpose so that I would never lose my Japanese. Though coming here, I lost a lot of it, but that I would have an understanding for the culture and the language, and I was fluent in it.
It must be an interesting place to be, Sensei, like people who straddle different cultures, and I can certainly relate to that myself. It must be an interesting thing to kind of, was there ever, I was not Okinawan enough to be Okinawan, but I wasn't American enough to be American. Was that ever an experience for you, things like that, Sensei?
Absolutely. My goodness. And we also, to this day, we see a lot in the media about the racial injustice and all of these. And some people can see it clear as day, whereas others, they see it as something that's happening on the sideline, but it's not related to them personally. So, a lot of people sort of either deny it or don't see the problem, and the problem only gets bigger. But I too, although you can look at me and say, oh, he's just another white guy with slanted eyes. But, I tell people.
I would just say, Sensei, I would never think or say that, just for personal safety reasons.
Yeah, but I would describe myself as being more like an egg. I'm yellow on the inside and white on the outside. It's kind of like that.
Only you can say that, Sensei. Only you can say that.
Yeah. So it's there are problems that I faced early on. Because I've always appeared more lighter skin on the outside, and I'm playing with my friends, and clearly my face was, not the same as my friends in just general structure or shape. I was definitely different, but we were good friends until something went wrong. As 7-year-olds, you could find a color off to be, a little bit wrong and cause reason for everyone to turn against you. But I had cases like that to where I was older and working on site on a U.S. military base, and some guy looking at me and saying, "Wow, you even look like a Jap." And I just turned around. I was driving. I just turned around, stopped the car, and I clocked him right out the side. He fell out to the street, and I just drove off.
He might still be lying there, Sensei.
I was really frustrated and crying inside. I really was, because I was still living in Okinawa then, challenged with being called an American, and then now I have somebody else telling me, that I look Japanese, or in a bad way, right? And it's like, okay. And I was always troubled with, looking at two flags, on the military base. There's one flying, a Japanese flag, one flying an American flag. I always wondered, which one am I?